Babylon was one of the most magnificent and wealthy cities of the ancient world. People from various regions visited just to marvel at its opulent temples, grand palaces, and, of course, the famous Hanging Gardens, one of the wonders of the ancient world. Today, we delve into the history and downfall of this prosperous city mentioned in the Bible. Welcome to the channel. I found it on YouTube. I am Vealuma, and it's a pleasure to have you here. Historical curiosities and hidden narratives are content I love sharing with you. Today, we'll explore the rich and storied past of ancient Babylon. The name Babylon means Gate of the Gods, but for the Jews, it derived from Babel, meaning confusion. Since the story of the Tower of Babel, Babylon has been seen as a place of rebellion against God. The city was cosmopolitan, home to many different cultures. Even at that time, education and primitive science were already present. The architecture and urban planning of Babylon were stunning, leaving a lasting impression. The Babylonian society had a deep appreciation for the arts, not only to display but also to flaunt their achievements. These characteristics attracted many from distant lands, perhaps marking the beginnings of tourism as we know it today. The Babylonians were polytheistic, constructing enormous temples for their gods. Like most ancient cultures, state and religion were deeply intertwined, with the ruling nobility and clergy managing the city's public administration, legitimized by divine authority. According to the Bible, what later became known as Babylon started in the time of Noah. After the flood, he and his family settled in a region called Shinar. There, Noah's great-grandson, Nimrod, began to dominate the people. It was likely under his leadership that the Tower of Babel was built, with the intention of reaching the heavens, a plan that did not please God. From that point on, the region and city became known as a place of opposition to the sovereign God, mainly due to their idolatry and cultural blending. In the book of Revelation, Babylon is depicted as the embodiment of the world's impurities and is prophesied to be utterly destroyed in the end times. Historically, around 2622 BC, Babylon was merely a village under the control of the Akkadian Empire. Later, it was conquered by the Amorites and soon gained independence. The city began to grow, leading to the rise of what is known as the Old Babylonian Empire. The first major peak of Babylon occurred during the reign of Hammurabi in the 18th century BC. Hammurabi is well known for his code of laws, the Hammurabi Code, which is the earliest complete legal code we have. This code was inscribed on a stone pillar over 2 meters tall, functioning as a constitution of sorts. The code contained more than 300 legal provisions written in cuneiform, covering crimes, property disputes, and other legal matters. It became known as the Law of Retaliation, with the famous phrase, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. These laws were so influential that similar principles can be found in the laws given to the Hebrews in the book of Exodus. But what were the characteristics of this Babylon? The city was known for its strong military presence, which allowed Hammurabi to conquer territory from the Persian Gulf to the upper reaches of the Tigris River. The Babylonians also had significant knowledge in mathematics and science, including studies in calculus and astronomy. Commerce thrived in the region, and religion was closely tied to nature, justifying the state's rule. The monarchs were totalitarian, almost regarded as gods on earth, and held absolute authority over law interpretation. However, the wealth of the city made it a frequent target of attacks. The end of Babylon's first great peak came from an assault by one of the most ruthless peoples of the time, the Assyrians. The Assyrians were notorious for their use of brutal violence and terror to subjugate their enemies. Their methods included gruesome acts like torture, impalement, beheading, and other horrifying techniques. With their formidable military might and advanced warfare strategies, they managed to capture Babylon, ruthlessly sacking and destroying the city. The Assyrians even set the city ablaze, declaring that not even the gods of Babylon would be remembered. This marked a devastating chapter in the history of the once thriving city, but it was far from the end. Gradually, the Chaldean people began to rebuild Babylon, and they eventually rose up against the Assyrians. In 612 BC, they launched a decisive attack on the Assyrian capital, Nineveh, virtually obliterating their oppressors and ending Assyrian dominance once and for all. With the fall of Assyria, Babylon was free to flourish once again. The Chaldean prince responsible for this revival of Babylon's splendor was Nebuchadnezzar II, who would go on to become the most powerful and influential ruler in the entire Middle East. A brilliant strategist and ruthless leader, Nebuchadnezzar was determined to rebuild Babylon with even greater grandeur than before, expanding his empire and conquering many territories in the process. Among his conquests was Jerusalem, where he brought the Jewish people under his rule. Nebuchadnezzar installed Zedekiah, a man he trusted, as king over Jerusalem. However, Zedekiah eventually betrayed him and sought independence, leading to a fierce response from the Babylonian emperor. Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem for over a year, cutting off supplies until Zedekiah was defeated. The city was utterly destroyed, including the Jewish temples, marking the beginning of the Jewish exile. Under Nebuchadnezzar's reign, Babylon reached the height of its power and wealth. The city's population swelled to an estimated 200,000 inhabitants, and it became a hub of immense artistic and architectural achievement. The city was home to massive structures, including the famed Mesopotamian ziggurats, grand palaces, temples, and, of course, the legendary Hanging Gardens. These gardens, located west of Nebuchadnezzar's central palace, are now considered one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. According to legend, they were elaborate terrace structures filled with a wide variety of plants and decorations, built to please Nebuchadnezzar's wife, who longed for the greenery of her homeland. Despite frequent mentions in ancient texts, no concrete evidence has been found to confirm that the Hanging Gardens truly existed. In 562 BC, after a 43-year reign, Nebuchadnezzar II passed away. With his death, the empire of this luxurious city began to decline, largely due to the incompetence of the rulers who succeeded him. These later leaders paled in comparison to the greatness of their predecessors. The last king of Babylon, Nabonidus, ruled until 539 BC. Strangely, he spent much of his reign in the Arabian oasis of Tema, studying religion and history, while his son effectively governed Babylon. During this time, the Persians, led by Cyrus the Great, attacked the city. The foreign conquerors subdued the Chaldeans and took control of Babylon, which would never again regain its independence. This marked the beginning of Babylon's final decline. For the Jewish exiles, however, the Persian conquest was seen as a blessing and a liberation, as Cyrus allowed them to return to their homeland. Eventually, the Persians themselves were overthrown by the Macedonian king, Alexander the Great, and Babylon fell under his rule. After the death of Alexander the Great, his vast empire was divided among his generals, with Seleucus taking control of the Mesopotamian region, including the city of Babylon. However, as time went on, the capital was relocated to another site, signaling the beginning of Babylon's gradual decline. As its role as an administrative center diminished, the once glorious Mesopotamian culture began to fade, taking with it the wealth and splendor that Babylon was famous for. The city's principal temple, dedicated to Marduk, continued to function until the 13th century, when it was finally abandoned. Today, little remains of this magnificent city, with its ruins lying near the modern city of Hilla in Iraq. It's fascinating to note that several biblical prophecies foretold the fall and destruction of Babylon, but perhaps that is a topic for another time. Babylon was a city of immense wealth and grandeur, renowned for its towering architecture, magnificent palaces, and breathtaking gardens. People flocked to live there, whether drawn by the allure of its beauty or compelled by the powerful Babylonian emperors. Situated in the fertile region of Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Babylon was located roughly 100 kilometers from what is now Baghdad, Iraq. Did you know the story of Babylon? Do you believe that Nebuchadnezzar was the most luxurious king in history? If you find this topic interesting, let us know in the comments below if you would like to see a video about the biblical prophecies concerning Babylon that have come true. Don't forget to leave a like, and thank you for joining us. We'll see you in the next video.